It recently became known that one of the main gaming video memes, Leroy Jenkins, was staged. This of course does not diminish the significance of this character, does not make him less funny, but a slight aftertaste of course remains. It's as if you've realized again that adult life isn't all that rosy. But this event made me remember other stories from MMO games, of which there are a huge number and many of which are not inferior in importance to Leroy Jenkins. And today, I've gathered some of the most interesting, funny, or simply captivating stories that emerged within MMO games, either through the actions of players or due to mistakes in the game code. This is Engineer. Get those likes ready and bring the snacks because we're starting. Killer Rabbits. Ultima. Online. In the early alpha version of Ultima Online, there was something called a virtual ecology, which included many features, one of which was the regulation of animal populations. So, when one species of animals started to exceed a certain threshold, they would be attacked by other animals to reduce the population, and when it dropped to acceptable levels, those animals would partially pull back. Everything would have been fine if it weren't for one mistake that led to some pretty ridiculous and funny events. The thing is, when one animal attacked another, it was considered a battle, and you could run away from a battle and gain a bit of experience for it. This is what rabbits began to use when running away from battles with wolves. It got to the point where the rabbits started leveling up seriously and became a threat to the wolves themselves. Soon enough, the rabbits became so powerful that they could kill low-level players. Sensing that there were a lot of rabbits and they provided a decent amount of experience, all the players started hunting them down, sometimes with deadly consequences. Because of this, Ultima Online was jokingly referred to as Monty Python the MMO, referencing a famous scene from the English comedian's movie Monty Python and the Holy Grail. The problem with the rabbits was later solved with drastic measures. They simply removed the virtual ecology from the game, which is actually a bit sad. The Cult of Fleas. Habitats. Few people remember this MMO from Lucasfilm Games because it was released on the Commodore 64 back in 1986. It was one of the first MMOs with visual design and was reminiscent of Location Quests and Sims. In it, for example, you could take on the role of a sheriff and hunt down player killers, and later you could decorate your entire house with floor lamps. Despite all the limitations, like servers that only operated a few hours a day, the game was very popular in its time. And in an effort to fill the game with content, or maybe just for laughs, the developers decided to add fleas. Fleas were placed on several random players, and when one of them got close to another player, they could infect them with fleas. The only thing is, the developers didn't take into account that the chance of transmitting fleas to another player was 100%, so a flea epidemic quickly broke out in the game. There were so many fleas that they started hunting the uninfected, and those in turn began to fight back and literally hide. The flea apocalypse began, leading the infected to even want to organize a flea cult and worship them. Noticing their mistake, the developers quickly removed the fleas from the players, the games, but it turned out to be quite funny. Hack, the God. Shadowbane. It's pretty hard to be surprised by hacks in MMOs. In any online game, you come across cheaters or other nasty individuals, and news about stolen account passwords pops up regularly. One group of hackers managed to turn the game hack into a real show. The thing is, they didn't just cheat, they achieved God status in the game, which led to real chaos. Entire cities were teleported to the bottom of the seas, the guard attacked everyone, settlements. Relentlessly, powerful mobs were smashing everything. Players were thrown through textures or right into the arms of monsters, and the ground was covered with hundreds of corpses, which led to the emergence of bands of marauders. This hell did not last long, but it managed to sow panic and horror among the players who did not understand what was happening at all. The developers managed to quickly fix the error and promised to punish those responsible, but whether they succeeded is unknown. The Marathon of Naked Gnomes. EverQuest. The Marathon of Naked Gnomes is one of the most famous player-created events in MMO games. In 1999, a proposal appeared on the EverQuest forums for players to create a first-level gnome, remove all equipment from it, and run through almost the entire game world in this form. The winner of the marathon would receive valuable in-game prizes. Hundreds of people responded to the call, eager to grab some loot or just have a good time. And at the beginning of the journey, it was really fun. The marathon was preceded by a half-hour boat ride to the Freeport, where a disco was held. But then began a long and extremely dangerous journey. The route passed through an area with high-level monsters that mercilessly slaughtered the naked gnomes. Dozens and hundreds fell back then, many simply dropped out of the race, so only a few actually made it to the finish line. And the winner was a gnome with the nickname Matt, who studied the entire marathon route before it started and made it to the finish line, without any particular problems. Later, the Marathon of Naked Gnomes became a beloved tradition not only in EverQuest but also in Lineage 2 and World of Warcraft. The March of the Protesting Gnomes. World of Warcraft. The first few months for any MMO are a time for adjustments. Items, classes, skills, and other things are buffed and nerfed to eliminate imbalance in the game. But in pursuit of this goal, developers often get carried away and infringe on players. This is exactly what happened in World of Warcraft. From the very release, Blizzard started repeatedly nerfing the warrior class, and players raised a wave of outrage, demanding that the developers revert everything back. But Blizzard banned the most aggressive players, and everything calmed down a bit. But in 2005, when the warriors were nerfed again, the players' patience ran out. At first, they bombarded the developers' email with angry letters, but unsurprisingly, they didn't get any response. So they decided to hold a strike in the game itself. Anyone could create a level 1 gnome and take part in the March of Naked Gnome Warriors, apparently not only wanting to draw the developers' attention to the problem, but also paying tribute to the Marathon of Naked Gnomes from EverQuest. The event turned out to be truly massive. Hundreds and hundreds of dwarves, as well as other races who decided to just have fun, moved to Talgorn, where a guild of dissenters was organized. There were so many people wanting to join that the guild interface bugged out and could no longer accept new members. Other players came to check it out, which caused the server to start struggling with the load. Seeing such chaos, Blizzard shut down the server for a couple of minutes, but that didn't yield any results. Then the developers sent a level 50 game master named Xanon, who demanded that the protesters disperse, clearly threatening them with bans. Fearing a ban, many left, while others who stayed faced punishment. Well, that's fine. At least the developers finally noticed and somewhat responded to the players' demands, but they didn't change anything. The March of the Naked Gnomes didn't make Blizzard buff the warriors back. On the contrary, they nerfed them even more afterwards. So this protest ended up being pointless, but it was bright and memorable. Plus, it brought back the tradition of the Naked Gnome Marathon in the game, by the way. Brazilian-style hacking. Gunbound. Brazil has its own hackers too, but their methods of hacking and obtaining information can go beyond just computer programs. A group of people playing Gunbound decided to get the password of the highest rated offline player and then sell it for $8,000. But password picking programs apparently turned out to be too complicated for them, so the would-be hackers resorted to extravagant measures. Popular in Brazil's social network Orkut, they found this top player and invited him on a date on behalf of a woman. When he arrived, he found the girl's place occupied by 4 seriously minded young men who simply held a gun to his temple and kidnapped him. For 5 hours, the kidnappers tried to extract the password, but they didn't succeed at all. Resigned to their defeat, the kidnappers simply released their victim, demanding that he not tell anyone about the kidnapping. But the top player did tell the story, and soon enough, the Brazilian hackers were arrested and brought to trial. Ralph, Second Life. Can you become so popular in a game that they dedicate a whole website to you for doing absolutely nothing? You don't kill, you don't engage in financial schemes, you don't join guilds, you don't hack the game. You don't do anything at all. It turns out it is possible, but not everyone gets to do it. One of the players in Second Life, Ralph, had such a talent. Second Life is an MMO social game that tries to imitate real life. It offers a wide range of customization options. You can earn real money, build houses, and form relationships. Well, and also have sex. In fact, with more detail than, for example, in The Sims, people have sex in Second Life quite often, and there's a good chance that Ralph will show up during the act. A small, fat, green troll. In both senses, the one who, having found himself on the site, takes out a cigarette or a pipe, opens a can of beer, and looks. He just watches the process. Of course, such a character spoils all the pleasure of making love. That's why people often want to drive Ralph away and say a phrase that has already become a meme in Second Life. Ralph, please go. To which Ralph responds with his usual no. The troll with a can of beer became so memorable to people that they started talking about him even outside of Second Life and even outside the gaming industry. Ralph became a meme, got his own personal website, which is currently down, and forever captured our hearts. The Incident of the Corrupted Blood. World of Warcraft. A story similar to the fleas from Habitat also happened in WoW. With the release of the patch, a high-level dungeon with the boss Hakar appeared in the game. One of Hakar's attacks was the Corrupted Blood spell, which gradually drained health from players over 10 seconds, and anyone infected had a 100% chance of infecting nearby party members. To prevent the spell from escaping the dungeon, the developers made it so that after Hakar's death, all players would be healed. But they overlooked one thing. If you summon a pet during a boss fight, infect it, and then immediately dismiss it, the effect of the spell is reduced. Stay on the pet for the next summon. Naturally, after defeating the boss unsuspecting players teleported to the market in major cities and released their pets, which infected everyone nearby. Even NPCs that didn't die but also infected everyone around them. Many, having sniffed out the trick, decided to deliberately infect everyone, and thus an epidemic of corrupted blood swept through all the cities of Azeroth on 4 servers. Low-level players died almost immediately, high-level players survived but became carriers of this plague. Panic ensued. Some fled to the forests and mountains to escape the infection. Some tried to help the infected, while others deliberately spread the epidemic. Blizzard even set up quarantine zones, but that didn't help. The epidemic spread more and more, leaving behind mountains of corpses. Many players panicked and spammed support, while others just had a blast and enjoyed the chaos. After a couple of days and a bunch of fixes, the epidemic was defeated and sharpened. It's a tribute to her. But this event will remain in the history of World of Warcraft. For a long time, especially since the players had an unplanned experiment, epidemiologists became interested in their behavior during the incident of tainted blood, and even made scientific studies based on this game event. Materials and distribution models. Epidemics that were taken into account in the analysis of real virus spread. Blizzard remembered the corrupted blood incident and later created a similar but planned event with a zombie epidemic. Mysterious crates appeared in the cities of Azeroth which players could interact with to change their appearance, turning into zombies and gaining special abilities. Naturally, the zombie apocalypse began, and the infected kept increasing. Quests to fight the undead started popping up, along with even some undead bosses. The event was warmly received, but the corrupted blood incident left a much stronger impression. These are far from all the stories that have emerged in MMO games. I haven't even touched on EVE Online, which is made up of 90% of these stories. So I'm planning to release the second part of the video. And if you liked it, if you give it a thumbs up, the video will come out much faster. In the meantime, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and see you in the chat where we can talk about all sorts of topics.
Oh, they're going to have to glue you back together in hell!